second word, the statement, is a word of grace. Luke chapter 23, verse 43. Now, we all probably have heard that Jesus was crucified between two thieves. There were two criminals on each side of him. And as you read through the Gospels, you see that one of those criminals was spiteful and arrogant and unrepentant and just hurling insults, and he was just belligerent. But the other criminal was humble and broken in heart. And he said, we deserve what we're getting here. We broke the law. We deserve the punishment we're receiving. But this man, referring to Jesus, he's done nothing wrong. And then he makes a statement that really and truly, if you think about it, if you can even just in your imagination put yourself in the place of this criminal hanging on the cross crucified, I can't even imagine what was, the feeling of that. But in that moment, he makes an incredible statement of faith. Lord, he says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Wow. I mean, that's powerful. And Jesus turns to him as the sovereign Lord of the universe in 43, and he says, today you will be with me in paradise. That's awesome. I mean, you talk about grace. Mercy could be defined as not getting what we deserve. Grace is the other side of that coin. It's getting what we don't deserve. It's God's goodness given to us even though we don't deserve it. And here's the easy way. I mean, this is simple to say because none of us deserve grace. No one has ever lived that deserves grace. Romans 3:23 and 6:23. Those won't be on the screen, but if you want to write them down in your margins, two of the foundational verses when you're kind of thinking about the gospel and our brokenness and our need for God. Romans 3:23 just declares all have sinned and all fall short of the glorious standard of God's righteousness. So we all fall short. We don't deserve it. We don't live up to it. Romans 6:23 just declares that the wages, which simply means the result, the end result of our sin is that we deserve death. And when the New Testament speaks of death, it's not just talking about our heart stopping. It's talking about separation from God. Going into, as Billy Graham used to say, a Christless eternity. And that's what we deserve. But God didn't give us that. God, through Christ, gives us grace. God gives us unmerited favor. And the cost for that was Christ's blood. See, Jesus paid for that grace for us with his own life. This is why you may have heard this little acrostic that a lot of Bible students use. Grace, G-R-A-C-E, God's riches at Christ's expense. Powerful. Jesus paid for it. This is why my grandma would say to me a lot when I was a little kid. She made, I know everybody in here can testify with this truth, that isn't it amazing that things that your parents said to you when you were little, all of a sudden when you're like 40 or 50, they start to make sense? You know, I used to say to my wife all the time, and I love my kids and they're sitting right here, but I used to say, now honey, just remember, the closer they get to 18, the dumber they get. But as the further they get on the other side, the smarter. No, I should say the dumber we get, right? The dumber we get. That's a better way to say it. The closer they get to 18, the dumber we get, but the further they get on the other side, we'll get a little smarter. It'll be all right, you know? Because you just start to figure some things out as you grow and go through life. Guess that could work either way. But anyway, I digress. My grandma, she would say to me all the time, this is one of those things she said to me when I was little, and it really makes sense now. She used to say, I know that a lot of people talk about when they get to heaven, they're going to go see their loved ones. They can't wait to see so-and-so and someone in their family that died, and they've missed them so much. And I totally understand that. But Braddy boy, when I get to heaven, sorry, I'm running right past your grandpa. I'm running right past my son who died before he should have. I'm running straight to Jesus. And I'm going to fall at his feet, and I'm going to worship him forever. Because he shed his blood for me. God's riches at at Christ's expense. It's wonderful. God gives us, through Christ, unearnable, unachievable on our own favor and blessing and acceptance and goodness. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21. We actually just sung about this in that last song. God made Jesus, who had no sin, to be sin. Can we even wrap around that? To be sin for us, so that in him, through submission to him as Lord and Savior, receiving him, stepping in, becoming a disciple of him, we might become the righteousness of God. Bible students for years have called this the Great Exchange. It's the best deal in the world. Jesus says, hey, here's the deal. I will take all of your sin and all of the punishment you deserve for it on me. And I'll give you all of my righteousness and put that on you. I'll take that deal. Huh? That's pretty awesome. That's what he offers us, friends. And so the big question as we come to this little moment in our message is, have you taken him up on that deal? Have you received that grace? No, you don't deserve it. And if I've had this conversation with so many people. We'll talk about baptism. We'll talk about taking a step of following Christ. People will say, but I just don't feel worthy. I'm like, well, I can make this conversation real short. You're not. And you never will be. It's not about your worthiness. All of us are going to get into heaven on the coattails of Jesus. Right? Not because we are so good, but because of him. That's the beautiful thing about this whole thing. And so, have you received it? John says in the first chapter of his gospel, he says that Jesus, who made the world and through whom all things were made, he came to that which was his own, but his own rejected him, didn't receive him. But then he says, but to those who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. That's awesome. Have you believed in him? Have you received him? Have you placed your faith in him? Have you turned and followed him? This is something Jesus says all the way through the Gospels. Jesus' call to him was always two words. Follow me. Follow me. This is what the Christian life is. Follow me, which means submit to me, trust me, obey what I've called you to do. Have you followed him in baptism? Have you been buried, as Paul says, buried with Christ and raised to walk in the newness of life? What an awesome thing. I just invite you, today is a great day to come and receive him.